What's going on? What the hell is going on?
He's 37.
I'm not going to lie, she's a fantasy of mine.
He's 30 stone.
Mate, if you'd have knocked, I would have opened and spoke to you.
He's a father of 2.
You're under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to kidnap. You do not have to sign anything.
What is going on? What are you talking about?
And on the 4th of July 2024, following an 8-day trial at Chelmsford Crown Court, former security guard Gavin Plumb was convicted of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder a woman who happened to be the former ITV This Morning presenter Holly Willoughby.
And stepped down from a career that they loved. That is a lot to process.
Hands and ankle shackles, ring and ball gag.
Metal cable ties, ankle shackles, handcuffs, a blindfold and a gag. These are just some of the equipment that Plumb, who comes from Harlow in Essex, bought in order to carry out the kidnap plan targeting Miss Willoughby that he had developed over a 2.5-year period. His plotting was brought to an abrupt end in October 2023 when the police arrested him at his home following a tip-off from none other than the FBI. Plumb told the jury of his summer 2024 trial, where he answered the criminal charges of soliciting murder, encouraging or assisting the commission of rape, and encouraging or assisting the commission of kidnap, that his purchase of the highly dangerous chemical chloroform was to get rid of a stain by the fridge in his Harlow flat. However, he told his fellow members of the online forum, where he hoped to source an accomplice for his twisted schemes, someone who should not only assist him in abducting and imprisoning Miss Willoughby, but also join in with the programme of rape and murder that he had planned for her, that it was to incapacitate both Miss Willoughby and her husband at the point when, with the help of an accomplice, he would break into Miss Willoughby's home and snatch her.
Right, plan of action. I'll give you a brief rundown. Basically, we're going to hit it at night. Less traffic on the road, etc. Chloroform, both of them. That way then they can both be easily restrained.
This online forum, a chat room to be exact, was called Abduct Lovers. With over 10,000 photos of Miss Willoughby on his phone, Plumb had a route mapped out for transporting Miss Willoughby from her home to the abandoned farm property where he intended to hold her prisoner. He had plans of Miss Willoughby's own home, which showed a nearby alleyway, as well as some crucial knowledge of CCTV systems and of other related security matters. In a Kik message, he wrote, quote, "She's in the public eye but doesn't have her own security and doesn't have CCTV at her house," unquote. While Plumb's obsession with Miss Willoughby was as deep as it was disturbing, the Dancing on Ice presenter was not intended to be Plumb's only victim. In their raid of Plumb's home in October 2023, police uncovered a whole list of women that Plumb intended to, quote, control, unquote. He planned to keep his intended victims in rooms in the disused farmhouse mentioned earlier, which he referred to as cells.
Yeah, we get this lot on board, mate. It's going to be the original Holly, obviously, our original targets, and then whatever else targets they want, because we've got about 15 cells we're looking at filling. So yeah, it's all good. Yeah, our name's Holly, so realistically we could do both at the same time. Meet up, swap vehicles, get both in the same vehicle, taken to their new location, basically.
Plumb intended to use Miss Willoughby herself to avoid any legal consequences to his actions.
We're then going to force her to make a video just saying that she come with us under her own free will, that she's with us under her own free will. No, she's fully consenting into everything we do to her. So that covers us.
Plumb's twisted schemes came a cropper, so to speak, or more like came a copper, when, at long last, he sourced a fully committed accomplice. While all the many previous candidates for the role had, at the last minute, changed their mind about taking part in Plumb's despicable scheme and duly dropped out, David Nelson, an enthusiastic member of the chat room mentioned earlier, offered to fly all the way across the Atlantic to take part in Plumb's scheme. Beside himself with excitement, Plumb eagerly accepted this offer.
3rd of the 10th, 2023, Holly.
An undercover policeman from America, whose true name is naturally being kept a secret, Mr. Nelson, who sensed that Plumb's twisted plan was more than just fantasy, promptly alerted the FBI to Mr. Plumb's online plotting. Essex Police arrested Mr Plumb after the Metropolitan Police, who had been notified of Plumb's disturbing plan by the FBI, advised them of what they had since accepted as an imminent threat coming from Mr Plumb to Miss Willoughby's life. Mr Nelson, whatever your true name is and wherever you are, thank you for saving Holly Willoughby along with the other women on Plumb's hit list from Plumb's evil plan. Plumb boasted that the things that he wanted to do to Miss Willoughby would put him, quote, on death row, unquote. In keeping with this, Plumb's most twisted plans for Holly were so obscene that the prosecution was unable to cite them in court due to the very serious risk that they would breach Holly's privacy rights as well as breaching the Obscene Publications Act. To convict someone of a criminal offence, the prosecution has to prove that the person has performed the actus reus, guilty act of the offence in question with the corresponding mens rea, guilty mind, and that the person has no valid defence. While I'm unable to quote the respective actus reus and mens rea of Plumb's 3 criminal offences, I can confirm that where mens rea is concerned, usually this is mainly a matter of intention. I think it's very probably already clear to you just how stupid Plumb is. As such, in her closing arguments, prosecuting counsel Alison Morgan KC made it clear to the jury that what they had to decide was not how realistic a project of abduction, rape and murder from a man weighing 30 stone who couldn't drive actually was. It was, in fact, whether or not that man, Plumb, truly intended to carry out that horrendous project, and whether or not he truly believed that he had found someone to serve him as an accomplice, since this second point would determine his guilt, if any, for encouraging or assisting another to commit kidnap, rape and murder. Plumb's defence was that his plan was just talk, a fantasy, however horrific that fantasy may have been. But from the chloroform, to the metal cable ties, to the research into the security measures connected to Miss Willoughby's home and to Miss Willoughby herself, to the prison planned for Miss Willoughby and for others, to the enthusiastic acceptance of Mr Nelson as an accomplice, to Plumb's 2 previous convictions for violence against women, Plumb's intention to enact his evil plan was duly proven beyond reasonable doubt. Plumb's 2 attempts to kidnap women from the year 2006 were, he says, all part of his plan to escape the toxic relationship that he was in at the time. On the Stansted Express train in 2006, Plumb slipped a note to a woman saying that she should follow him off the train at the next stop, and that if she didn't, he would, with the gun that he was concealing, shoot her, shoot other passengers, and then shoot himself. When, on bursting into tears in response to Plumb's threat, the woman found other passengers coming to her rescue, Plumb took flight. 2 days later, however, while again travelling on the Stansted Express, Plumb did the same thing to another woman. On this second occasion, however, he really did have a gun with him, an imitation handgun. This second woman just refused to follow Plumb's orders, which prompted Plumb to change tack somewhat. When both he and the woman subsequently disembarked from the train at the next stop, Plumb told the woman that he was actually a policeman, but that she didn't have to go with him if she didn't want to even so. The 2 women that Plumb attempted to kidnap on the Stansted Express in 2006 were air stewardesses. We can cover Plumb's obsession with air stewardesses in another video. On subsequently being convicted of attempted kidnap, Plumb was given a suspended sentence. He spent no time whatsoever in prison then, which, it would seem, thwarted his plan to be sent to prison in order to escape the toxic clutches of his toxic girlfriend. In case you don't know, Woolworths is a former high street chain store that sold everything from school uniforms to pick and mix. In 2008, 2 girls who worked at the Woolworths in Harlow found themselves, out of the blue one day, being forced into a room in the shop by none other than the security guard at the shop, a man by the name of Gavin Plumb. While Plumb proceeded to tie one of the girls up, the other escaped and went for help. Plumb served half of the 32 months to which he was sentenced for these acts of kidnap and false imprisonment. You are not alone in feeling totally disgusted with the leniency of this sentence.
In 2006, he approached a woman who was a member of cabin crew, airline cabin crew. Approached her on a train with a very threatening note and tried to sort of coerce her off the train. That event went no further. 2 nights later, on a train again, a member of cabin crew, this time he's armed with an imitation firearm and tries to take this woman against her will. For those crimes, he received, wait for it, a suspended sentence. 2 years later, in 2008, Plumb is now working at Woolworths, the store that is no longer with us. He kidnaps two 16-year-old girls, locks them in a storeroom, ties one of them up, and the other one manages to escape and raise the alarm. He gets sentenced to 32 months for those crimes and serves 16. Two fine examples, in my view, of insufficient sentences for very serious matters.
You were also not alone in wondering how, given his 2006 convictions, Plumb was able to get a job as a security professional either back in 2008 or in his very recent role as a shopping centre security guard. Today, a security professional has to hold a licence for security work, and a person with criminal convictions involving violence can't get one. As such, I personally can't explain how Plumb was able to work in security up to the time of his arrest back in October 2023. As for his job as a security guard from 2008, even if back then you didn't need a licence to work in security, it's still difficult to see how someone with criminal convictions involving violence could get a job involving protecting others. Given the likely prejudicial effect on the defence's case of what is known as bad character evidence, which includes a defendant's previous convictions, if any, the bar for admitting such evidence into a trial is notably high. The prosecution's application to the court to be allowed to cite Plumb's criminal history to the jury succeeded on the basis of propensity, patterns of offending. Section 101 of the Criminal Justice Act, CJA 2002, is where to find the 7 gateways for the admissibility of defendant's bad character evidence, one such gateway being the matter of propensity, naturally. The case of the Crown versus Hanson and others from 2005, meanwhile, is the leading case on the reliability of bad character evidence in the matter of propensity. For her part, Plumb's defence barrister got nowhere when she protested that it was unfair to cite Plumb's previous convictions against him, the convictions being from nearly 20 years before, and Plumb himself having pled guilty to his 2 previous indictments. In line with a provision of Section 101 of the CJA, the judge dismissed at least the argument relating to the age of Plumb's convictions. He or she disagreed that Plumb's convictions being from so long ago made it unjust for those convictions to be disclosed to the jury. As for the fact that Plumb pled guilty to his previous 2 indictments, I don't know exactly how the judge answered this, but those guilty pleas of Plumb's clearly didn't make any difference to the judge's decision on the use of bad character evidence against Plumb, and thank goodness. And in case it's not already clear, in his summer 2024 trial for plotting to kidnap, rape and murder women, Plumb pled not guilty. Soliciting murder, the most serious of Plumb's 3 convictions by far, can attract a life sentence. Then again, that could mean as little as 15 years. A sentence hearing opens with statements of fact from the prosecution, followed by any submissions and applications that it wishes to make. The defence then mitigates, or tries to, after which the judge passes sentence. This video was made a few days before Plumb was due to be sentenced.
I only really go out my front door to put a bin bag in the bin just outside the flat. And that's every few days. When I'm in pain, the pain gets so bad that I physically, it's crippling.
Is Gavin Plumb an involuntarily celibate individual, known more commonly as an incel? If so, is this the true motivation for his violent behaviour towards women? From Elliot Roger over in America in 2014 to Jake Davison from our very own Plymouth in 2021, cases of men who kill out of the pain of sexual frustration are well documented. Having become obese in his early teens, Plumb, who once appeared in a BBC documentary about obesity, where it would again seem that his criminal history was not investigated as part of his screening for the programme, reports that he has, since his early adolescence, suffered persistent bullying over his appearance. He says that he has been left with zero confidence and spends most of his time on his own playing video games. But on these facts alone, we can't conclude, beyond reasonable doubt, that Plumb is celibate, or that if he is, it is an involuntary situation. I personally suspect that he is very much someone who unwillingly goes extended periods of time without sexual intimacy. This may be so despite the fact that he has 2 children, whose ages, for instance, I don't know. All the same, without knowing the details of Plumb's sex life, if any, and without further insights into his specific psychological nature, I personally won't swear to Plumb being an incel. I'll just content myself with saying that he's a stupid fat cunt who should be locked up forever. With his physical appearance, and with his complete remorselessness and shamelessness, Plumb reminds me of the serial killer Levi Belfield, who is serving 2 whole life orders for 3 murders and 1 attempted murder. Belfield's victims were all young women with blonde hair. His 11 children, no less, come from his 4 marriages and from his many non-marital relationships. His repeat relationship failures come from his unrestrained and savage violence. Belfield used to batter all his wives and girlfriends. Sharing his bed with his mother as an adult whenever he went to visit her, Belfield has a past in security work. He used to be a club doorman. If you've enjoyed this video, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.